Audio on demand from Vision Christian Media.
I hope it's like sitting down with a Christian friend who's maybe got some knowledge and research in that area, and they can just point you in the right direction. So all our authors understand what it's like, and it's full of grace and full of understanding for those pinch points that we go through.
Parenting can be joyous, magical, tiresome, boring, impossibly stressful, and complicated. Today's guest is Harriet Connor. She's the content editor of Growing Faith, an online magazine for Christian parents run as a ministry of YouthWorks Media. We'll be discussing the recently published book, Parenting in God's Family, that contains reflections and advice by 16 very different authors, all seeking to encourage and equip parents with biblical wisdom and practical tips. That's Harriet Connor with myself, Brett Ryan, for Focus on the Family, Australia. And with special thanks to Hope Media in Sydney for coordinating our interview. So I'm in Melbourne and Harriet's in Sydney. So thank you so very much. Well, welcome to the program, Harriet.
Thank you.
And you've been a guest for Focus on the Family in the past, and so it's lovely to have you back. So for those who haven't heard your story, tell us a little bit about yourself and your family.
Sure. I met my husband while we were both studying at Bible College, Sydney Missionary and Bible College. So married to Daniel. And since then, we've had 4 sons and quite an age range. I've got teen, soon to be teen, down to one not yet at school.
Right. So you've got a busy household. Having 3 boys, I can definitely empathise, but having 4, that's well done to that.
It is pretty noisy.
And what about your professional upbringing?
Yeah, so I got into this really just as a personal need, trying to raise our own children, and not having grown up in a Christian family, I felt a little bit lost as to what it meant to be a Christian mother, Christian parent. So when I had a toddler and a newborn, which proved to be quite a challenging time for me, I went back to the Bible, trying to work out, well, what does it say to people like me, to modern parents? And so I started the journey there and read through the whole Bible, just searching for God's wisdom, and ended up writing it up as a book. And I've continued, that was 7 years ago now. And I'm still thinking and still searching for wisdom and still trying to encourage other parents as I go. And I do that mainly now through my work with YouthWorks Media as the content editor of their website, Growing Faith. So we produce articles and other resources to challenge, encourage and equip Christian parents for this very challenging task.
I went on the website for YouthWorks Media. It is extensive, but I also went on the website for Growing Faith, and that's also extensive. And so my hat goes off to you and your team, creating such great resources for families of every shape and size to help them in their journey, because we all need a little bit of help from time to time. And this is a wealth of different things that will resonate with every age and stage of children. So well done.
Right.
You said you've written another book called Big Picture Parents, Ancient Wisdom for Modern Life. Can you just give us a little bit of a snapshot about that book?
Sure. I guess when I went to the Bible looking for wisdom for parenting, I had my daily questions and dilemmas, but when I went back to the Bible, it sort of pushed me to step back and see the bigger picture. So that book really helps us to understand what is God's big picture for families, what is our big purpose as humans and as parents, what is our big problem being human parents, raising human children in a fallen world. And then we look at what are our big values, the Christian values that are going to shape what we do. And finally, our big family. And we're looking at, we're not doing this alone. We're doing this within the family of God. And that's really a common theme. And that's the new book as well. We call that Parenting in God's Family, because we're here to do this together.
Yeah. And I love how it says biblical wisdom for everyday issues. And we need biblical wisdom because, as you've already mentioned in our culture today, whether you've got a faith or not have a faith, we all have challenges, these everyday issues. but using the wisdom that is rich from God's word will really help us navigate this. So what makes this book different from other books that are available?
I think most Christian parenting books are a bit like my first book. It's one author and it's a cover-to-cover book. You enter into the person's way of seeing things and benefit from their wisdom as a whole. Whereas Parenting in God's Family, I'm really excited about it because it's not just one person. There's 16 different authors, and a lot of them have very particular expertise in their area.
Yep.
And so it's not a cover-to-cover book. It's more of a topical book. It's designed for those topics that you might be really struggling with, really feeling confused, lost, pulling your hair out, and you just need someone to come alongside you. I hope it's like sitting down with a Christian friend who's maybe got some knowledge and research in that area, and they can just point you in the right direction. So all our authors understand what it's like, and it's full of grace and full of understanding for those pinch points that we go through, but then just gently pointing to a framework from the Bible for where you might go from here. And obviously, because we're covering lots of different topics, the chapters are quite short, and it might not tell you everything you need to know about that topic, but many of our authors have written whole books on the topic that they've covered. So we also point you in the right direction if you need more guidance.
I was actually looking at the list of the authors, and I think Focus on the Family's interviewed, half a dozen of those in the past. So fully endorse this. Daniel Say was on Technology Raising Humans, Patricia Rearacone on how to talk to your kids about sex and sexuality. And one that would be very familiar for many of our listeners is Colin Buchanan, the children's entertainer, but great child evangelist as well as a family evangelist as well. So Colin actually wrote our foreword at the beginning. So he got to read the whole thing and give us his take at the end. And so we're really thankful that he took the time and that he really liked what he read. So he's given the foreword to the book. Fantastic. So looking at you're talking about the issues that are facing parents today. So what are some of the hot topics that are covered in the book?
So we've got some of the really current issues, I guess. You mentioned Patricia Rearacone. So Patricia's written, together with her son, Kamal, has written some guidance to help parents as they help their children develop a healthy sexuality and a healthy gender identity. We've got a Christian psychologist, Yixin Zhang Shu, who's written about the early years and coming from a perspective of attachment theory, how we can build a strong and secure base for our children. But this is a great example. This is the best of secular wisdom, but from a Christian perspective. So in that chapter, she shows that this is an expression of how God loves us, the fatherly love that God has for us.
That's
we
excellent.
touch on technology, as you said, with Daniel C. We look at education choices. We look at the issues that are probably more timeless, like discipline or sibling relationships.
No, those things are still topical, really? Sibling rivalry?
Parenting styles we look at. And then we also acknowledge at the back of the book that there are different kinds of Christian families. So we've got a section, what if my spouse is not a Christian? What if I'm a single parent? What if my child has special needs? These kind of chapters to help us think through, well maybe Christian parenting, will it look different for my family?
So it's good that you mentioned that. Obviously, most people would think, well, this is for Christians. But it also navigates, it's very practical. And I love how we have the privilege at Focus on the Family speaking into a wide variety of audiences. And even people who don't have a faith go away. And even though we've used the Bible as a reference point, it's still very practical. So you've actually been able to navigate the practical side of things. So for anyone who really wants to do better in their parenting, would that be?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And we've got chapters that are more sort of age-based. We've got one about pregnancy and birth from midwife Jodie McIver, the early years chapter that I mentioned, but also much broader topics up to teenage faith. How do we navigate faith with our teens? So there's something in there for everybody and a great range of topics that is relevant and challenging for all parents.
And that side of things is really, many parents will be listening to that. How do I guide them so they can have their own faith? Because, it's easier when they're a little bit younger and you can drive them and you've got some control. But as they're getting older, how do they have their own faith? And so I imagine that is something that is very, very timely, and the thought on the top of the mind of many parents right now who are saying, well, what do I do? What do I do? So you got any advice in that area?
Well, we certainly take some time in the book to look at the basics of Christian discipleship, to look at reading the Bible with your family, praying with your family, and going to church with your family. So there's sort of the building blocks, I suppose. Well, is your question about that sort of family devotion time? Or?
Well, it could be anything, because a lot of times people would say, and I'll use a reference for our boys growing up, is, they'd been brought up in a Christian home. Both Kate and I were actively involved in ministry. They went to a Christian school. So a lot of people say, well, tick the boxes, done. But yet they still had questions. And I remember my son at the age of 16 says, Dad, I don't know if I get it. I don't know if I can follow this thing. I don't understand. And so that actually, motivated us to reflect on, just because they have a lot of head knowledge, they had to go to their heart. And for him, fortunately, he was a reader, and he actually started reading books on apologetics to own his own faith. And then from there, he went on to another trajectory. Now, that's not everyone's story, but I recently went to a conference and they were talking about time and relationship. Time and relationship are very key in discipleship. So as mums and dads, you are the first voice and have that first voice privilege, but you need others. It takes a village to raise a child, as they say, and get other people involved to help disciple your children in that journey.
Yeah, I think we do have to keep our eyes on that longer term goal and acknowledge that as our children become tweens and teens, it does become really important for them to have relationships with Christian adults who aren't us.
Yeah.
So definitely agree with that. And so if we can be already starting to think, well, who are the people that could play that role in their lives, whether that's
so good
parents when you're in that sort of traditional system, parents or youth leaders at church, just looking around. It's key to realizing what they're going to need.
We prayed for mentors. That's what we did. We prayed for mentors to speak into their lives. So it's not just mum and dad's voice they're hearing other people.
And you, in turn, can be that for other kids.
Exactly right.
For friends' kids, and you can start by modelling that with other kids. Yeah.
You've written a chapter called What is Christian Parenting? And I'd like to understand a little bit more about that. We're just going to have a bit of a break, and we're going to talk about that, answering that question. How do you define what a Christian parent is? You're listening to Focus on the Family in Australia, and we're talking to Harriet Connor, the content editor of Growing Faith, a YouthWorks media ministry.
The Word for Today is Australia's most widely read daily devotional, designed to give you practical teaching to keep you focused on your relationship with Jesus. Read it online or subscribe to the free printed edition at thewordfortoday.com.au.
Well, welcome back. We're speaking with Harriet Connor. She's the content editor of Growing Faith, a YouthWorks media ministry, and she's compiled a book called Parenting in God's Family, a biblical wisdom for everyday issues. And you're listening to Focus on the Family, Australia. Well, before the break, I was actually hinting towards a chapter that you've actually written, and it's called What is Christian Parenting? And it might seem very obvious, but how did you define it in the book?
I think Christian parenting firstly means receiving our children as gifts from God and reflecting His fatherly love to them, and taking responsibility for our children's apprenticeship in life and faith.
I love that, apprenticeship.
It's a really helpful framework, I think.
Yeah.
And the final aspect to Christian parenting is acknowledging our human limitations and introducing our children to God, their perfect Heavenly Father, and their spiritual family in the church.
That's so good. And I mean, if you're looking at the reference point, and I love this verse, and many people would know that I've referred to it often, where it talks about in Deuteronomy chapter 6, where it says, love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and strength. Basically, have it on your own heart first. So we have to live it out. because a kid will smell a hypocrite a mile away. Live
Yeah.
that out and then instill it. And I love that word. Why did you choose the word apprenticeship for your children? And I love also the fact that we are stewards of our kids. They're not ours, they're on loan, and we have to be good stewards of that opportunity.
Yeah. I think sometimes we can reduce Christian parenting to either information that needs to be downloaded to them or just a little Christian bit tacked on the end of every day. I think the apprenticeship model helps us to see that it's a whole of life learning process and it's modeling.
Yeah.
I think the apprenticeship model really focuses on who you are as well, and you're just bringing your children along with you
Yeah.
in life. And it's a really long-term, an apprenticeship. It goes over many years.
Very much so.
And the apprentice eventually becomes like their teacher. And we're apprenticed to Jesus. I think apprenticeship is probably the closest word to discipleship that we have. So we are apprentices or disciples of Jesus, and we're bringing our children along behind us.
Yeah.
They follow my example as I follow the example of Christ, Paul says in 1 Corinthians 11.
Yeah.
I guess that's why I chose the word apprentice,
That's
apprenticeship.
Excellent. And I also have to say and just acknowledge that there are no guarantees. You can do everything right to help your children along their journey, and yet God has given us all the free will. And some children choose not to follow their parents' faith, and it's heartbreaking as it is, but you can still continue to love on them and never underestimate the values that you've instilled in them over the years, the investment in that apprenticeship, and at the end of the day, they can choose to follow that and go on with their own. But the good news is, and some of the research actually says that some that may drift away realize how much they valued their upbringing, and then when they have children of their own, they return back to church.
Yeah, I've seen that. People realizing, hang on, there was something really good about that that I want for my kids.
In part of the book, you've got this chapter called The What If. What's that about? What if?
We've got some chapters at the back that acknowledge that Christian parenting may look a little bit different for different families. So some chapters thinking about, well, how can I do Christian parenting if my spouse is not a Christian?
Yeah.
Or if I'm a single parent? Or if my child has special needs? So we've got writers there who are in those situations, sharing some particular encouragement for others in that situation.
Yeah. And probably the encouragement is one size does not fit all. If you've got a child, say, on the autism spectrum disorder, you only meet one child on the autism spectrum disorder. It's not foolproof that the next child has got exactly the same challenges. And so you have to find those unique things, whether it's in the single parenting, the circumstances of single parenting, or whether, your spouse is antagonistic towards your faith, or are they supportive of your faith? And even though they may not have their faith their own. So it is really good that you're using real life experiences to help people along those areas.
And there's a very strong thread through those chapters about the beauty and the value of the church. That in those situations, all the more we need each other. And
Very much so.
Yeah. So to plug your little family into the wider family of God.
Yeah, that's so good.
Really important thing for all of us, but especially those in those unique situations.
You've spent a lot of time writing and editing on this topic of Christian parenting. How are you going in your journey as a parent?
Yeah, ask my kids this week. We've had a really tough week. I think, I would never say that I'm a parenting expert, but I think that what Christian parents need to be is experts in our human limitations.
Yeah.
So we're trying to raise children who are real people in the real world. We're not trying to raise perfect children. So we really need to model to them how to cope with our human limitations and our human imperfections.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to be an expert in honesty, in repentance, in apologizing, and in getting back up again the next day to try again tomorrow.
Yeah.
So our kids don't need perfect parents. That wouldn't really help them. They need real parents who are really trusting in God day to day and who keep persevering. I think our kids will learn what we value by the things that we say sorry for.
Yeah.
Things that we get back up and keep trying to do. So, if we're talking about a family devotion, say, and it doesn't always happen or it falls off the cart sometimes, the fact that we keep restarting or we keep saying, oh, look, we need to get back into this.
Yeah.
The striving, what we're striving towards shows them what we really value.
Yeah.
And we just keep working towards it and we inch towards it, 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Yeah.
But I think we just really need to show our kids how to live as real human beings in this real fallen world. And so the way they see us navigating hardship or stress or unexpected things that happen or disappointment, that's what we're modeling. Not that those things never happen, but okay, how do we walk through that with God's help?
Yeah.
And how do we grow through these hard things?
That is so good and really quite wise. The fact is our kids don't need perfect parents because we fall well and truly short. They have to see real, authentic, genuine faith. And I like the idea of them seeing you apologize, for example, when we've made a mistake. But I also like the idea that you're talking about where role modeling, you mentioned that word. The fact is, I think we've mentioned this in the past, for what one generation sees as optional, the next generation will see as obsolete. And if you don't think devotions are important or if you think church attendance is not important, the next generation are going to say, well, wasn't as important for mum and dad. Why should it be important to me?
Yeah, I find I'm constantly talking to our kids about choices, whether it's what we do on a Sunday morning or how we spend our money or how we use our time. It's always about choices. We just need to choose the most important things first.
Yeah.
And then we'll fit the other things in around it. And they're watching, what do we choose?
Yeah, that's so good. In the few minutes that we have left, what would you say to a parent right now to just encourage them in their journey? Obviously, they can use this as a great resource and I highly recommend it, but what else would you like to say to them?
Firstly, you're not alone. We all have those moments where we feel like the worst parent in the world. I have said that this week. I really have, when our youngest got into a dangerous situation because I wasn't paying attention. You're not alone. We all have those feelings or feeling stuck, feeling like we've got it wrong and not knowing where to go from here. You're not alone and God is there. God is with you. God will guide you and strengthen you. So we first need to put our faith into action. I think Christian parenting is a real test of faith.
Yeah.
Because as you say, we can't control the outcome. We can't control the events in our lives. We don't even know who these little people are that God has sent into our families. We need to get to know them slowly. So it's always about handing our children back to the Lord, knowing that He made them and He knows them and He loves them and He has a plan for them.
Yeah.
And then we just go step by step. Well, where would you like to get to with this issue?
Yeah.
And what's one step you could take towards it? And who's someone that you could talk to about it? Pull in your friends, Christian friends, talk to someone, and guaranteed they will understand or they will have gone through something similar. So I love going to a play group or a women's Bible study or just chatting to other parents or older parents, grandparents at church. Share with someone and hear what they have to say, because it's wonderful to get that perspective of the wisdom of years, of another generation, or just a bit of outside wisdom might just help you step back and get some perspective. And then we just slowly put one foot in front of the other, don't we? And we will make mistakes. We just keep plodding in the right direction.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. Well, thank you so much for being committed and dedicated to compiling this book and also for the work that you do at YouthWorks. Thanks so much for being our guest today.
My pleasure.
Our guest today was Harriet Connor. She's the content editor of Growing Faith, a YouthWorks media ministry. She's also compiled a book with 16 other authors called Parenting in God's Family, Biblical Wisdom for Everyday Issues. And you can find more information and access to that book by going to that website at youthworksmedia.net. That's youthworksmedia.net. And to see how you're going in your parenting journey, consider taking our free parenting assessment or having access to a lot of our family resources, including our family toolkit. You can go to our website at families.org.au. And thank you for joining us today on behalf behalf of the whole team here at Focus on the Family, I'm Brett Ryan, inviting you to tune in for another edition of Focus on the Family Australia.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.